We looked at this the way Aristotle does. Aristotelian logic says one of the first things you need to do is you need to question. You need to pose the question, figure out what the question is. And then after you figure out what it is, you start to analyze the different options for answering the question. Specifically, what have other people said about it? And then hopefully from that, you can draw your own conclusions of what you believe it to do. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to question, and then we're going to look at the various approaches, and then we're going to come to some conclusions and ideas. So with that, let's start with the question. The question is one of trying to discern what's wrong with this biblical picture. And so we've got this biblical picture that illustrates, in one hand, a loving God, but in the other hand, we've got passages like this one. Go strike Amalek and devote to destruction all that they have. Don't spare them. Kill man and woman, child and infant, ox and sheep, camel and donkey. And oh, by the way, we should add the tagline, that is God speaking. Wow. Wow. I mean, scoot that to one side. That's very different than the song we sang in youth group when I was young. Blue skies and rainbows and sunbeams from heaven are what I can see when my Lord is living in me, except when he tells me to go kill the infants and the children and the women among the Amalek community. See, we didn't have that. We were working off of passages like John 13. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another just as I've loved you. I give to you that you love one another just as I've loved you. People will know who you are if you love one another. Look at this passage of Scripture. You've heard it was said. You've heard it was said that you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Love your enemies. This is the God who said, go to Amalek and devote to destruction everything they have. I mean, these really do seem to be totally opposite of each other. So if that's the question, let's look at the various options and various approaches that people have had. In this class before, he's a great Old Testament scholar. He writes on difficult passages, does a marvelous job. I give away copies of his commentary on Genesis like candy. And that's saying something, because it's like this hardbound, thick commentary. But I give those away to anybody who's got big questions about Genesis, because he does an amazing job in there. And also because he quotes But Tremper's got some wonderful insight to very difficult passages in the Bible. And he does something really neat with this. He says, if you read the Bible as a book and consider this part of progressive revelation, and by that it means God reveals himself more and more as society and culture ages. How are we doing time-wise? We're doing okay. I need a kid who's under 12. Do we have a kid who's under 12 here who doesn't mind coming up on stage? Yes. Do you mind coming up on stage? Does that embarrass you to come up? Any one of you. You don't want, it doesn't embarrass you? Good. You come up too. Okay. Well, we've got two of you. Don't you come up. Come on. We need a girl to come up here so this looks better. Come up, young man. Tell everybody your name.
My name's Destin.
Destin. And how old are you?
I'm 12.
12. Perfect.
My name is Fiona and I'm 10.
Fiona is 10. Destin is 12. I need a teenager. Go over by Destin. Okay, Brittany, tell everybody your name.
I'm Brittany, and I'm 17.
17. Brittany's 17. Now I need someone who is, Dr. Bob, how old are you? Come on up here. Okay, this is probably not the best illustration, and I definitely cannot afford to give Dr. Bob the mic, so I will hold the mic While Dr. Bob, come over here. You stand by Brittany. This is Dr. Bob, one of my best friends in the world, who's a lawyer at the firm, but also a PhD psychologist. He's our jury psychologist who figures out how jurors are thinking. Would you please tell them your name?
Dr. Bob.
And tell them how old you are.
60 plus, 66.
He's in the 60-plus zone.
66 or 67.
And tell them what part of Texas you're from.
I'm from North Texas.
New Jersey. Now, here's the principle of progressive revelation. I want to tell you about the love of Jesus, okay? And I want to explain who God is. You're 10 years old, and I'm going to do the best I can in 10-year-old language, okay? But when you turn 12 like Dustin, actually, you look like you're a little more mature and smarter than he is already. I'm joking, young man. This is my buddy. When you turn 12 like Dustin, you will know the ways of the world much better than you do as a 10-year-old, and I can explain it to Dustin a little bit differently than I will you. Now, for Brittany, she's 17. She drives a car. I can explain to her using analogies of how to drive a car. She knows what they are because she's wrecked plenty of, she's driven. Sorry, Mom and Dad. She's driven. She's got 2 older brothers. They've explained to her how to drive. Her mom and her dad have. I can do some things with her teaching that I can't do with you guys yet at your age. Then there's Dr. Bob in the 60-plus range. He's got a doctor in psychology, a PhD, a doctor of law degrees. He's got 2 doctorates, so he's a paradox. He has been he's done clinical psychology work. He's done jury study work. He's done legal work. He's done all sorts of things. I can explain it to him using analogies, pictures, and illustrations far different than y'all. Now, the idea here is that the Bible, in very primitive culture, God had a very primitive explanation of things, including who he was. But as culture grew, as people became less brutal, as people became more civilized, as people more and more understood the love of God, then he was able to finally progress to give his fullest revelation in Jesus. And so we see those stages in the Bible. Make sense? Now, all of these positions have great merit. They're much better than the position of Friedrich Nietzsche, who just said that God is dead. And Time magazine caught up on that in 1966, I think, was the cover of Time magazine. Nietzsche said it back in the 1800s, late 1800s. But that's where it is. Now, those are some typical views, if you were researching this, that would help you answer the question, is he a God of war? Is he a God of love? I like some of that, but I got a whole lot of my own I'd like to add. And so I want you to know that there are some things that I still think you need to think about in the midst of all of this. And some ways that this weaves together, some of the strengths from some of these positions without some of what I perceive to be weaknesses of them. So this is a thrill for me to get to share with you. But this week, let me just tell you the conclusion is God guilty of fraud? No.